special board meeting.
Well,
we can call it to start. For Pledge of Allegiance, do we have the flag, or do we wish to expedite the process?
Well, let me do roll call first.
All right.
thank you, Dina.
Director Weed,
Here.
Gunther,
Here.
Huang,
Here.
Sethi,
Here.
and Akbar.
All right. We have a quorum. And we have a flag. So let us do the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
Allegiance to the flag
of
of
the
the
United
United
States of
States of
America
America
and to the
and to the
republic
republic
for
for
which
which
it
stands
stands, one
one nation
under God,
under God,
indivisible,
indivisible,
liberty and justice for all.
liberty and justice for all.
All right. Let us proceed then.
Director Reed, we do have number 3 on the agenda, I believe, is public comments on matters of the notice of the special meeting.
All right. Do we have any member of the public who wishes to address the board? It appears I do not see a hand raised. So although we have Angeli, we have one other member of the public has just joined us, who I believe is the director in another district. So if there is no public comment, we will move on to the next item.
Okay, thank you, Director Reed. And I'll go over a few little logistics here at the beginning. And just to double check on a sound check, can everybody hear me okay? That's an attendee. Maybe Kurt Ahrens or Shireen, can you speak up and let us know that you're all hearing us as well?
Yes, this is Kurt.
Hi, yes,
Great.
we can hear you.
Great, thank you. Well, good evening and welcome to the Alameda County Water District's public meeting on the Water Efficiency Master Plan. My name is Laura Heides, Manager of Water Resources, and I'd like to thank you for joining us for this important discussion as we look toward the future of water use efficiency in our community. Before we begin, I'll share a few notes on logistics. I would like to note that this meeting is being recorded and now conducted as a special board meeting. To ensure the best sound quality on Zoom, we ask that attendees remain muted unless speaking, in particular if you're using a computer and a phone. If you need to get our attention, please use the raise hand feature in Zoom. For anyone participating by phone only, you can press *9 to raise your hand to get the moderator's attention, *6 to mute or unmute yourself. If you have questions throughout the presentation, please put them in the Q&A available at the bottom of your screen. Also, we thank you in advance for your patience if we experience any technical difficulties. In that event, please bear with us as we get back up and running. We will have a short presentation, about 30-ish minutes max, followed by a moderated question and answer period, and we look forward to hearing your questions and comments at that time. We will respond to questions at the end of the presentation. Before we begin, ACWD would like to ask audience members to respond to a quick poll question. You should see the question on your screen about now. The question reads, how did you hear about today's public workshop? Tri-City Voice ad or newspaper, email message, social media, ACWD's website, or press release. So we'll give you just a moment to vote. And I know there's panelists that can't vote, unfortunately.
Oh.
Boo.
Okay.
I was going to say that the voters demanded it.
Well, I think while that poll is wrapping up, I'll continue with some of the logistics here. We already talked about we do have a quorum, so we've opened this as a special board meeting. We did not have any public comments. So now I'd like to go ahead and, as we're wrapping up the poll, introduce Miss Stephanie Nevins, who will be doing some additional introductions and making tonight's presentation. Stephanie has been with the district for over 15 years and serves as ACWD's Water Conservation Supervisor. Stephanie is the project lead on the Water Efficiency Master Plan, and I am pleased to turn the meeting over to her to begin the presentation. And it looks like we've got about 4 attendees. So again, thank you for being here tonight.
Thank you, Ms. Heides. I'm going to now take over and share my screen. I'd like to say good evening to our ACWD Board of Directors, other staff, and members of the public. Give me a minute to do this. Okay, here we go. Can everybody see my screen? Thumbs up.
Yes, we see the
Okay.
slides on the side too.
Okay. All right. So I'll be providing an overview of ACWD's Water Efficiency Master Plan, the draft plan, with the help of our entire water conservation team tonight. I'd like to introduce our those two team members. First, I'd like to introduce Megan Marino. She's our water conservation specialist 2, and then also Giselle Delgadillo, who is our water conservation specialist 1. So they'll do a portion of the presentation this evening. Okay, let's get started. I'm very excited to be here tonight to talk about this project that's been almost 2 years in the making. And let me get going with the next slide here. Just a couple of words about terminology. So you often hear conservation and water use efficiency used to describe a reduction in water use. And it's true, those things both reduce water use, but water use efficiency is a more accurate way to describe the measures that we're going to talk about tonight that are in the Water Efficiency Master Plan and what they do for customers, which is they increase the customer's water use efficiency. While conservation is primarily encompasses behavioral changes to reduce water use. And when we're talking about water use efficiency, it's about doing more with less versus giving something up. Conservation can kind of mean changing habits and maybe even a little bit of change in your quality of life, but potentially just temporarily, like through a drought, to save water. But those are the differences there. So we're moving more towards water use efficiency within this report and in the future. And a measure is an action that delivers water use efficiency. So like a toilet retrofit, lower flow rate saves you water, but the customer doesn't even notice that it has a lower flow rate. It just happens and they save water. It's using water more efficiently. A program refers to a group of measures that are implemented collectively. And in our Water Efficiency Master Plan, a strategy refers to an approach for developing a water use efficiency program. The presentation tonight is organized in this way. We're going to just talk briefly about our water conservation program, our existing program, before we implement what's in the Water Efficiency Master Plan. We'll talk about why we did the Water Efficiency Master Plan, what was the driver for it, several drivers, in fact. And we will talk about the elements in the plan, next steps, and then we'll have an opportunity to have people ask questions and talk and discuss the plan. So I'm going to hand over the presentation to Giselle Delgadillo, but first I just want to mention that the current water conservation programs came out of a 1995 integrated resources planning process. It is not the exact program that we started back then, but that was the beginning of it. And we've changed it as needed to adopt new technology, new ways of implementing measures. So the program we have today is a remnant from that original plan and has grown and changed as needed. So now I will go ahead and ask Giselle to take over.
Thank you, Stephanie. So the district's current conservation program offers a variety of measures that can help our customers increase their water use efficiency and conservation efforts. There are measures that are offered to all customers, as well as measures that are specific for residential customers, commercial, industrial, and institutional customers, and our large landscape customers. So one example of a measure that is actually offered to all of our customers is our water efficient landscape rebate, where customers can receive a rebate for removing their lawn and installing low water use plants and water efficient landscape instead. And more information about how to learn more about these rebate and measures and how to apply for them will be provided at the end of this presentation. Next slide. And examples of measures that are offered to all of our customers include the water efficient landscape demonstration garden at the district, our educational materials, our outreach events, such as our landscape workshops, and our water waste monitoring system. And now I'll pass it on to Megan.
Thank you, Ms. Delgadillo. I'll be talking about the main drivers or the purpose of the Water Efficiency Master Plan. Next slide. So this was mainly brought up when we looked at the 5-year strategic plan. It was one of the drivers, but not the only one. So in strategic goal number 2, it says to sustain a reliable, high quality water supply for district customers. And the Water Efficiency Master Plan, or WEMP, really fits into that in 3 different ways. One is to make sure that ACWD is compliant with new state regulations, which I'll get into in the next slide. 2 is to leverage the automated meter infrastructure project that the ACWD was and will be rolling out shortly. And 3rd, it was to fit into some long-term strategic planning efforts done by the district, including the Urban Water Management Plan and an upcoming 30-year integrated resource plan. Next slide, please. So a little bit more about that legislation is that back in 2018, the state passed some legislation, also known as Making Conservation a California Way of Life. And this set new standards for water use efficiency for the state of California water agencies. So right now we're in the standard development phase where they're looking at studies and determining what objectives retail and wholesale water agencies are going to be held to. And then in 2022, they'll be adopting those standards. 2023 will be calculating those objectives and starting to report on them. And we will need to be in compliance with the standards by 2027. So this is very important for the district and our customers because we'll want to be able to put ourselves in a position where we have a plan and we know we'll be in compliance for these kind of unknown regulations that are being determined this year. Next slide, please. So what are these objectives? They're made up of 4 different components. So you can see in the bubbles there, indoor use, outdoor use, water loss, and CII or landscape. And that's all rolled into one objective. So ACWD will have a unique target made up of these 4 components, and we will be the ones responsible to meet that target, not individual customers. It won't be held accountable. Of course, those individual efforts will make allow us to reach those targets, but the individual customers won't be responsible. And to go into a little bit more detail about each component is just that right now the state's kind of defining these standards for, say, indoor use. They're looking at how many gallons per capita per day each person in our service area is likely to use in an efficient manner, and then multiplying that out for our population. For outdoor use, they're looking at all of our landscaped areas and coming up with a budget that seems reasonable or an efficient use target that we'll be striving to meet. And then for water loss, those are mainly distribution inefficiencies, water that's unaccounted for, or leaks perhaps in our system that they'll really want to ratchet down and tighten up. And finally, the CII is just mainly for those dedicated landscape customers that will have standards. So that gets all wrapped up. And this is upcoming, and this plan, this Water Efficiency Master Plan, will help us meet that. And this was definitely one of the main drivers for ACWD to establish the plan. Next slide. You may have already heard from our ongoing promotional efforts, but the Alameda County Water District approved of the Advanced Metering Infrastructure Project, or AMI, in 2020, and will be rolling out in the next 3 years. So what AMI is an upgrade or technological advancement to the meter, which allows it to be read remotely versus manually. So with this new type of meter, it can be read more frequently, so customers can reduce surprise water bills, detect potential leaks early and often, and view up-to-date water usage. And this is definitely going to help water use efficiency because customers will have a better understanding of their water use. So we wanted to make sure that the WEMP aligned nicely with AMI, and it does, which you'll hear more about later in the presentation. Next slide, please. So next, I'd like to hand it back to Ms. Nevins to talk about the details and elements of the plan. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Marino. These are the elements of the Water Efficiency Master Plan. We worked on all of these areas to create the plan. I'm going to talk more detail about each and every one of these. The community survey that we conducted for this project was very helpful in determining many things about our customers in our service area. It was conducted by Probolsky Research in October 2019. They matched district customer demographics with a random sampling methodology. 400 customers were surveyed in 3 different languages. The main goals for the survey were to obtain data for the post-drought demand analysis and looking at what was the potential for rebound from the drought. Also looking at the saturation of water efficient fixtures in our service area and identifying what customer interests were in water use efficiency. I'm just going to talk about 3 main parts of the survey, but there were about 45 questions, and I'm not going to go into all of them. So, but they all kind of, each one of these ones that I'm going to show you played a role in helping us with aspects of this project. So we asked customers what they did during the last drought. This was very helpful in trying to determine what the drought rebound would be when we made our projection. And you can see a lot of people made behavioral changes during the last drought. We also asked about what types of water saving fixtures our customers had. This helped us with the saturation of fixtures within the model for the project. So we have what's called an inventory of toilets and other fixtures. And this helped us hone in on those percentages within the model. And this was the customer interest profile. So a lot of people are interested in water use monitoring devices, and we're going with AMI. So that's really helpful. We're going to be addressing those needs. And then there's a lot of outdoor water use efficiency interest as well. The analysis also looked at what we've done in the past, where we are today compared to then. As you can see, as the population's been growing, our water use has gone down. And the yellow line there is the 2020 target that we have met. So we in 2009, they passed legislation. We had to set a target and meet it in 2015 and 2020. And we've done it. The new water use objectives are going to be lower than that 2020 target. So we've got more work to do. And then this also just shows that when you look back at the 1995 IRP study, or Integrated Resources Planning Study, and it looked at projected demands, we've met nearly 26% of our current demand through conservation or water use efficiency programs and measures. The next thing is the baseline water use, the demand forecasts. So Medallis Water Management has a model. We provided all our water use information, and then we created that current baseline use, which was 2019 in the model. We used Association of Bay Area Government data to grow the population and project what demand would be out into the future, along with the drought recovery. They also put in estimations for plumbing code, so natural conservation that would happen just because the regulations for flow rates of fixtures and volumes of toilets have been very reduced quite significantly after the last drought. So we rolled the plumbing code in there and then new program savings as well. This is a demand forecast with and without plumbing code. So you can see plumbing code does quite a bit to lower demand. And I think I've said this before, so we do have, the demand looks a little strange out past 2040. We wanted to include all of the regional planning data, but we didn't want to be overly aggressive with growth. because if you show higher growth, you have to plan for new supplies, and we didn't want to prematurely plan for new supplies. The water use efficiency strategies start with measures. We reviewed 130 measures, and then we narrowed it down to 26. We used this criteria to figure out what those 26 would be. And then those 26 measures were arranged into strategies by our consultant with our input. We also asked the board to provide their priorities. Cost was the #1 priority. So strategy A is the lowest cost and also has the lowest water savings. And strategy B is the next, a bit higher cost, more savings. Strategy C goes even further. We did not include several measures for various reasons. One was that some of them do the same thing that AMI does, and so we didn't feel like they were necessary. The recommended strategy in the Water Efficiency Master Plan is strategy B. It's cost effective for the short term and also provides some good information for us to look at for the future and for our integrated resource planning effort that will start in 2023. It expands on our current efforts to meet new state targets. We know we're going to have to be focusing on outdoor and commercial, industrial, and institutional use. So it adds to that. It provides measures for low income qualified customers, integrates with our AMI project very well, and supports customer interests and takes advantage of regional partnerships. The benefit cost analysis is right here. We've got a present value of savings at over 80 million, present value of utility costs at just under 31 million, and a very cost effective per acre foot saved cost of $694. It is the cheapest source of supply for the district and a benefit cost ratio well above 1. The demand forecast with and without plumbing code with strategy B is shown here. So it further lowers demand out into the future. The next steps are, this week we've been meeting with the cities, service area cities, and now we're hosting this meeting tonight to get public input. We're asking for comments by the public to be delivered to us by Sunday, the 28th of March, so we can update and address them in the plan and have it ready for approval by our board by the April 13th board meeting. Once the Water Efficiency Master Plan is final, we will begin implementation of Strategy B for the next 5 years. That involves developing some work plans and outreach plans. We'll review it again during the integrated resources planning effort. And I just want to note that the Strategy B is an outline or a guide. It's not prescriptive. If we find there's a better way to do something or new technology, we can change it as long as it fits within the approach. The implementation schedule is here. We've got 16 measures. Some are already going on right now, or we need to change them, and some start later in 2023. And there's some toilet measures that will end before 2030 because we believe we'll be reaching saturation of very efficient toilets by then. So I'd just like to thank you for attending this informational meeting tonight. And now we are open for your questions or comments. Again, if you want to provide comments after tonight, you can send them via email to my email address, which is right below. And I'm going to move on as we get the questions ready. Please put them in the Q&A or the chat, and we will address them. And I'm going to move forward to the next slide, which is all of our programs. So if you're curious about what we offer and you're interested in participating in those programs, you'll have all the information you need on the next slide. Thank you.
Thank you. I don't see any comments in the chat at this time. Maybe showing up on mine. If there's any member of the public that has a verbal question or comment, this is your time to speak. And we're in a workshop, so we're not under the tight time constraints. There's been no comments, and we lost one of our members, public members. So let me bring it to the board and see if the board has comments or questions.
I have a couple of comments.
Please, Director.
Yeah, Paul Sethi. Thank you for a very nice presentation. I've seen much of this in the Water Resources Committee meeting, I think, before I was discharged from that committee. So, you know, one thing I noticed on slide 21, when I went through the presentation before the meeting here, is there's a very strong correlation in the usage of water in our community, and I think this is reflective of much of California. Every time we go through a drought, you see a drop-off in usage, and your survey that shows behavioral changes that people are making. I think over time, people have just become smarter and smarter about what the effects of drought are and the fact that we have to conserve water. And so I grew up in this community. I can reflect back, you know, through a few droughts here, but you can almost draw a correlation between droughts and then subsequent drop-off. And I can see, if you try to just draw a little bit of a straight line here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 drop-offs. And so a lot of our water conservation, I think, goes back to education of the public, you know, on conserving water and trying to find more efficient ways of using water. If you can go back to slide 9 on the state regulations, there we go. So yesterday I was listening into the State Water Board discussion on the water loss standards. And then again, today we had our Aqua subcommittee working on the water loss efficiency standards too. And we had 200 people in the meeting yesterday. We had 25 to 30 today in the Aqua meeting. There is a lot of concern, anxiety, maybe a better word for it, with what the State Water Board is developing in terms of water loss standards and the algorithm that they're trying to put forward. And so as we move forward, I would ask our staff to help the board understand better what those rules are going to be. What are the future rules that we're going to have to live by, and how do we measure in the best technological way the water loss in our distribution system? Is that a fair request?
Go ahead, Laura.
I was going to say, I think we can certainly keep you apprised of the regulations as they're evolving, and Stephanie and her team are following a lot of this on the water loss front. I know we have Devin Becker, who's not here tonight, who's closely following those regulations. And I'm sure, you know, between a committee presentation or something like that, at some point we can keep the board apprised of that as it evolves. There's a lot of interest in that, and I think it's a bit of a moving target, but we can keep you posted.
Well, when you show the 4 components of achieving better water efficiency, here we go. I think we know how much we can calculate for indoor use, outdoor use, even outdoor landscaping. I think the unknown factor here is what is the actual water loss in our distribution system? That's the one unknown in your entire equation here. And I suspect it will be easier for ACWD to adopt measures to identify water loss where it may exist in the system. The concern and anxiety that I was pointing to comes from water entities, water agencies, communities that are disadvantaged and don't have the financial resources to do extensive water loss measurement or even remediation. So I think as we implement AMI and we look at some new technologies, that's the one area that I'm most interested in seeing where we can get some better efficiency in our system. If it's 7% of all of our water is disappearing in the distribution system, that's a big component, right? So I'll leave my comments at that. Thank you very much for the presentation.
Paul, if I might add on the water loss issue and then open it up to other members of the board. The meetings I attended with members of the state on 402 and then 555, which is the water loss legislation AB, indicated they were going to look at non-revenue water, and that's how they defined water loss. And they gave them a measure of how much water was produced and put in the system and how much was sold. The going to solid state and replacing the positive displacement mechanical meters, we've already indicated from a cost standpoint is going to indicate up to anywhere from 4% to 8% a greater water use, a reduction in our non-revenue water by 4 to 8%, or total water, and a greater reduction in the percentage. So I suspect that by merely going to the positive displacement meters, or eliminating positive displacement meters for 65,000 of our meters, we'll probably achieve the state goals without any other work at all. So I encourage us to take a look at that and consider and putting into that terminology when you do your water loss analysis, what is our non-revenue water? Thank you. Do we have other comments from the board on other issues?
If I may, Director, whoops.
Yes, Judy.
Go ahead, Judy.
Thank you, Director Gunther. I just want to say thank you to Ms. Delgadillo, Marino, and Nevins for a great presentation. It's very clear and concise and has all the necessary information, so it's really appreciated here.
Thank you.
I'd like to comment on what Director Weed just said. It's an interesting statement in that, we are going to be replacing our meters to ultrasonic. We are going to be going to AMI. We're going to have some very interesting data as to what that water loss ratio is and he may be very well correct that we have a significant amount of water loss just based on how we meter the water. The fact is, though, if we do get that data and we find that to be the truth, that's significant perhaps throughout the entire state, in that we have an opportunity in the next couple of years, because we're going to be going from almost all mechanical meter to almost all ultrasonic meter. And that could be some very significant data in about 4 or 5 years time, certainly within a year or two after we make the majority, if not all, of the AMI meter installations. I also am a firm believer these things are really going to show a lot of the leak detection. And there's some benefit there that we may be able to work on identifying ways to perhaps see a water use at a very low rate where the leak is versus a high rate where the leak is. Something similar to when I had a leak in my slab in my garage that I didn't see for a significant period of time until it finally started to leak out. And, home built in the 70s, my neighbor had to suffer a leak under his house. All these leaks were who knows how long they were going. And if there's a way we can figure out to utilize the ultrasound low flow meter to see a leak, I think that has a lot of potential benefits too, particularly for the customer. But I'm also fascinated a little bit by what John was saying, in that we may have some really good data, because if that really does happen, that is significant, and it will not just be for us, but it's across the board. And I'm very, very curious where that'll go.
Thank you. Let me note that we made a determination that we do the smaller meters as ultrasonic, and we retain the positive displacement for the 1.5 and above. The greater problem and disparity in the differences is in the larger meters. So there's an opportunity in the future to reduce our water losses by going ahead and then further replacing the larger meters that we're going to be spending considerable amount of money on AMI. And as they go out, putting in a ultrasonic meter as replacing the larger ones, but then you may want to give a 5% plus credit to the user, because they will be recording a greater water use. The leaks on the customer side, based on the initial analysis and report by the state, were not going to be considered water loss, because that was revenue water. So it's the non-revenue water would be their measure if they follow that guideline, and that puts a different onus on the entire situation. Other comments by members of the board? I have some more that I'd like to bring up.
Well, I agree, John, that it may not be the state requirement, but certainly the water loss on the customer side is the customer issue. So I think they're both worth, but I think they really are both worth looking into. And I'm happy I agreed with your ultrasonic meters. I think that was a good move.
I would note that we have never exceeded $2,500 per year in reimbursements for leaks on the customer side of the meter. We've got a $50 million partial solution to that, but it's not been a significant issue from a dollar standpoint for the district.
It's not a significant issue to the district, but it's a significant issue to the customer.
Yeah,
neither myself nor my two neighbors on either side of me put in for a rebate. So just saying, and there's a lot more leakage out here that we don't know about because we never see it. It's all on the customer side.
All right.
I just want to contribute a little bit here to the conversation that I've sat in a number of the state water board meetings regarding this water loss and better efficiency in the system, and I'm on the subcommittee too. Laura has attended a variety of those meetings as well with me, and the focus is primarily on the non-revenue water loss in the distribution system that cannot be measured by AMI. And that's what's leading to this state of anxiety that I'm talking about. We have 450 water districts in the state of California. There are only a few dozen that have the capability and the financial wherewithal to actually measure with the newest technology water losses that are occurring within the backbone of their major pipeline network and leading up to the customer. And so that's the focus of water loss, is not at the end user site, it's within the primary distribution system, where by most accounts, that's where most of the water loss is, through pipes that are cracked and welds that are no longer holding in place. And I know that Ed Stevenson and his engineering team have been looking at some of the newer technologies to survey underground our pipeline network and identify areas where there are leaks. There's even new satellite technology available, all kinds of stuff. So I really want to distinguish between these two conversations. They're both very valid. One is the water loss, from the street lateral to the home, and the other is within the distribution system. And even in listening to some of these discussions, we have reservoirs with major cracks in them where they're losing water, and it's just sinking down into the groundwater table. There's all kinds of inefficiencies within the distribution network. So I just wanted to try to make that real clear here.
Thank you, Director Sethi. That's actually what I was going to say is usually when we talk about water loss is through transmission and storage loss, right? Both are really good conversations. And I think AMI really is going to help us quantify and help our customers figure out water loss. I have the same problem with Director Gunther. One day I thanked my husband for my new radiant floor in the kitchen. Unfortunately, we did not install radiant heat floor. The hot water line broke. So AMI is going to help our customers, but that's a different discussion than what we're here today. Or I am just going to say that staff presented a really good package of efforts and information on our approach for water efficiency / water conservation. Maybe that's not a good word to use, but thank you.
Great, thank you. I have a couple more points, which we have a discussion, I think, under 1.3 in your report on BMPs, which were the best management practices, which were part of the Natural Resources Council, and a number of provisions, which were removed in, I believe, about 2008 or to 2010. And it would be worthy or worth identifying what some of those were and what the implications were. One of them was BMP 1.4, which said that the fixed charge should not, service charge should not be more than 30% of the bill. And unfortunately, we had fallen into that trap and we've not gotten out of it. So that is no longer a state requirement, has not been for at least 10 years. And it's, I think, helpful to note that we're not burdened by that. We also had a provisions of an IRP in 1995, and I suspect that we're about due to redo that. And we referenced the guidelines that we're have challenged in meeting in that same document for the 1995 IRP. So I'd be interested in seeing when we revise the new integrated resources plan, what criteria we're going to use, and one way or another hopefully find ourselves in compliance. We meet all the state goals, and to note that the future development of this area will be multifamily housing, where the per capita use will be less. So it would appear that based on those known trends, that we're well within any state criteria or guidelines for water use and the need for conservation. I do have a concern on our cost-benefit analysis. I asked for some information on last year's water use. And last year we sold 38,800 acre-feet of water. The commodity or variable portion of that was 21.5 million. Our marginal cost for water based on that, and it's overstated because it includes the fixed cost for San Francisco water, is $550. We mark that up and we sell it to the customer for $2,050 because we sold $79 million in our commodity cost. So we have about a 400% markup on our marginal water cost from a standard economic analysis, and another $800 in service charge. So while there is a cost benefit possibly to the customer, I don't see a cost benefit to the district for doing conservation. Our marginal costs are not that high. So if we were to hopefully to address a dysfunctional rate structure, that might help and bring it into line. But the numbers we're using for our cost benefit analysis with the 2.62, I strongly question, as I strongly question the numbers we use with the AMI cost benefit analysis. I don't believe them.
Well, I'd like to comment on Director Weed's comments again, only because this is a recorded meeting, because reality is we don't have a lot of public here, but it is a recorded meeting. And I just like to say that I disagree with him. I find our fixed charge is right where it should be. We've discussed that in our rate hearing meetings, and we will continue to discuss that, I'm certain. And that's fine. That's what it's all about. And I'm satisfied with where we are with fixed and commodity. I disagree on the conservation aspect that you question. And I'm only saying these, like I said, because I mean, this is a recorded meeting. It's possible somebody could pull this meeting and feel that, you know, this is the opinion of the entire board, in which case it's not. So that's my opinion.
And I would just like to add on to that. All the numbers presented tonight and at the AI meeting are thoroughly vetted by our staff. They are supported by actual numbers and financial figures, and they were vetted and reviewed by experts. I would say, Director Weed, I respectfully disagree with you. You do calculate things differently than we do in terms of how we define fixed and variable charge. We definitely have to agree to disagree on that, but I just want to make it really clear on the record. The number we presented at our board meetings and workshops are all vetted and can be backed up by financial documents.
The documentation we have in this report shows a commodity cost of $1,742 per acre foot. That is clearly bogus. If you use the standard that you should be looking at the cost of the commodity itself, not a number of fixed charges that we throw into the mix. And that is the problem. And it's made it almost incredibly difficult to do standard planning and programming, because when you're that weighted on water consumption, conservation changes dramatically based on social media. And our budgets have been wildly non-predictable historically. And go back to a 40% waiver in 2015. So the challenge you have is we're not operating in a professional manner. We're doing it in the industry plays this game, but it's a game. And it's an unfortunate game because it's not running we're not using responsible enterprise business practices in these calculations.
I just have to respectfully, strongly disagree.
Okay, well, that is there.
All right,
Okay.
I have some last comments I would like to make unrelated to this latent part of the discussion here. I'm hoping this will be a contribution here. A little over 2 years ago, I think it was 2018, in our Water Resources Committee meeting with Jim, I brought up the conversation about the fact that we had different rebates for different type of customers, residential versus CII, and I wanted us to work with some partnerships around the community, and the first one I identified was Kaiser Hospital in downtown Fremont and over in Union City. You may recall this, Laura and Stephanie and Megan, and Ms. Delgadillo wasn't with us at that time, I don't believe. So working with our former newer councilwoman who became the head of PR for Kaiser, and she's on the Chamber of Commerce Government Affairs Committee with me. So I made a proposal to her to see if we could work together to get Kaiser to replace all of its lawns with water efficient gardening, drought tolerant gardening. And I'm I'm really happy to report back to the entire board here and community that it's been a real success, that we have been swapping out grass all over central Fremont and Union City and replacing it with water efficient landscaping. But we had to work out a special deal with Kaiser because we didn't have a program in place to compensate them for the amount of square footage that they were replacing. We had a limit that was really tied to the residential square footage. And so I think we need to, because that's where the biggest opportunity is on landscaping, is with CII around our Tri-City community. And I think we have to have a different schedule of what the rebate is for these different type of customers, and to have the opportunity to partner with people, you know, in a way. And I made the suggestion, I'm still looking forward to it. We partnered with Kaiser to get this project done. It took a lot of effort to get both teams from the Water District and all the appropriate people from Kaiser together, the people that are in charge of Kaiser regionally. And that took a lot of time and effort. And we had agreed at the beginning that once the project was done, we would have these little foot monuments, you know, that said a partnership, or in cooperation, Kaiser in cooperation with the Alameda County Water District, water efficient landscaping. Something that alerts people to the fact that that we're at the forefront of trying to solve some problems in the community. And then and the reason I picked Kaiser was because it's a high traffic area. When people are congregating again around that facility and they see that ACWD is actively involved with their hospital on water efficient landscaping, then they start to ask some questions. They look at their bill a little bit closer. Maybe they go to our website. They inquire about, you know, landscaping rebates and things like that. So I would still like to see those foot pedestals or foot monuments at Kaiser. But nevertheless, I request of the staff that you take a real serious look at coming up with some kind of progressive schedule based on the type of customer. Is that a worthwhile request?
Thank you. Do we have other board members? Let me add on to that one also and request that you will talk to the cities about eliminating the requirement for irrigated landscape at commercial buildings and parking lots. I can show you some examples of a city-owned parking lot adjacent to my building here, which had no irrigation when they put it in. Oleanders are wonderful. And if you need a list of plants that can work in a non-irrigated environment, contact Caltrans. They landscape all of their freeways with non-irrigated, for the most part, non-irrigated landscape.
And if I could just add to my last comment here, this is really for Shireen and her team. I think there's a promotional opportunity to go back and talk to the players that put this all together for Kaiser, and to highlight it in, you know, a nice article for the Tri-City Voice or something, how ACWD partnered with Kaiser locally. And I know we've done it with some other large developers, you know, in our high-tech parks too. But these are opportunities to showcase, you know, what we're trying to do for the community.
Well, thanks for this input. I just wanted to jump in and say thanks for sharing these ideas. We're just absorbing the information today, and I think some of them maybe delve into, you know, some are more programmatic details, some maybe delve into the policy realm. So we'll take that back and think about how we might need to explore some of that further, and some of them kind of even dive into the issues around strategy 3. So I mean strategy C, which is beyond what's currently in the WIMP. So just want to also invite the team to chime in on any of these particular items quickly, if there's any specifics.
Does staff have a question or comment here?
Well,
would like-
Laura, you know, in our committee meetings, I've commented on or even suggested things that are in the realm of strategy C, but I'm realistic. We're looking at the next 5 years, maybe 10 years to engage all these elements of strategy B. And so the things that are in strategy C are not things that are not worthwhile doing, but they may be in the next decade, that another set of players in the water district are taking a look at, other ideas. So it's all good to see in the graphic, so we can look at the horizon and see what's out there, the creative ideas, things that are being thought of. And I don't want anyone on the board, the staff, or community to dismiss those future opportunities. They're all good.
Thank you. And I just want to note real quick, we do have a raised hand from a member of the public. So
Oh, yes. I don't see that here, but whoever has raised their hand, please speak.
Ken had his hand raised there for a minute.
Ken, you're,
Yes.
okay, he's now no longer muted.
Yes.
Ken, please make your presentation or statement.
Yes, thank you very much. So since the agenda of tonight's special board meeting doesn't include the rate structure, I will refrain from making comments on that topic. I'd like to circle back to the discussion about the Doppler ultrasound or non-positive displacement meters and their increased accuracy. As I've spent the majority of my professional career in metrology, I wholly support accurate metering. However, since the nexus of tonight's meeting is water conservation and water efficiency, I must point out that the increased or the more accurate metering at the customers' homes doesn't result in any extra water, right? I mean, it means that the district will collect, roughly 5% more in revenues. So an inaccurate meter is a financial loss to the district, but it is not a water loss. If you were to replace all the inaccurate meters with perfectly accurate meters, it would not result in any net savings for the district in terms of the amount of water it would need to supply to the customers. So to that degree, it doesn't help the district reduce its water usage and or its water efficiency. To the degree that a more accurate meter would allow a customer to identify leaks, that certainly would help. To Director Sethi's earlier comment about being able to detect the leaks in the distribution system, that is a true savings or a efficiency increase for the district. And to the degree that the ultrasound meters are more accurate, it should enable the district to look at the sum of the metered water versus the volume of produced water. And since you have a higher degree of accuracy in the sum of the metered water, you should have a higher degree of confidence in the difference between the produced water and the metered water being more accurately representative of the distribution system losses. To the discussion about the rebates, I do wonder whether the district has surveyed customers about other reasons why they have not undertaken water conservation measures. For example, there is the cost of replacing one's lawn, and that is being addressed by the rebate programs. However, there's also the hassle factor, right? Finding a contractor, going through the design process, and things like that. Has the district considered working with local landscapers to come up with sort of standard plans or pre-approved or pre-vetted designs just to make the process go more smoothly and more quickly? That could result in a higher degree of uptake in these water conservation programs. Similarly with toilet exchanges and low flow, water flow reducing devices. And my last comment is, again, back towards Director Sethi's earlier comments about his noting that the water usage tends to drop off after each drought. I'm curious to know what fraction of that sort of permanent reduction in water usage is due to exchanges of lawns for more drought tolerant landscaping, because we do know that for the typical residents, the gross majority of the water use is outside the home, and a reduction or a replacement of the lawn is a permanent reduction in the water usage for that residence. So I'm curious to know how much of that behavior that Director Sethi noted is actually due to exchanges of lawns for drought tolerant landscaping. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
And I think, would you like, Director Weed, we may be able to have some answers to some of the questions?
Certainly, please.
Ms. Evans, is that something you can address about the turf landscaping change out?
Yes, yes. So we actually, in the survey, we asked customers those two questions that you talked about, like what are the obstacles to water use efficiency for them, and cost was number one, but also just having the right information available and just knowing, where to go to get information. Those were like the main obstacles. So you hit that right on the head. And we were just talking with Union City recently about, they have some policies, and they were mentioning it would be really great if there was some design plans. So we will be looking into some coordination on how to make this work and easier for our customers. And then on the comment about what's permanent, we asked that question in the survey. It was a question related to, did you stop watering your lawn during the last drought? If you did, what are your future plans? And so from that, we were able to pull out a permanent reduction from customers who had replaced their lawns with water efficient landscaping. And we found that there was a I believe it's just over 1 MGD of permanent drought savings. So that was one of the motivations of doing that survey, was to kind of try to isolate that, figure that out. And then I also just wanted to make one comment about the state regulations. We met our 2020 target, and we have, but we are looking at more strict targets, and we don't know exactly what that's going to look like. There's several components. There's work being done right now on a water budget for outdoor water use, and the 55 gallons per capita per day that's in the legislation right now there's actually pending legislation to further ratchet that down. So AB 1434 says that it could go as low as 48 gallons per capita per day, pretty much within the next couple of years. And so that hasn't been passed, but there is some concern, because we have seen our indoor GPCD climb up under the work from home under the pandemic with COVID-19. And there is some, some of that might stick, because people may be working from home more regularly. There are state laws that are being proposed to reduce emissions that would encourage people to work from home. So we could see a higher indoor per capita GPCD. And so this 55 gallons could come down and our GPC could go up. So there is some concern there.
All right, well, thank you. I would note that there have been some real horror stories on the cost of some of the conservation efforts that we've had in the area. We had I recall one in Union City, where it was a public housing project, and they wanted to replace the toilets with more efficient toilets. They did the study and they came back and they said, well, the cost breakdown would be 11 flushes per day, every day for the life of the fixture. And they could justify it. So much of this is not based, is more driven by issues other than economics. And that was an ACWD report that we had on our committees. That was a number of years ago. Livermore, their city engineer, at a meeting I was at, reported that they had a recycled water that people could pick up the water and then take it to their homes and irrigate crops, or not irrigate their landscaping. And given the manpower they needed, they came up with an estimated cost of $11,000 per acre foot for that program. So it was very well received by the public, but it was an absurd cost. So we can do these, and much of this is politically driven, and it's political correctness and expediency. So hopefully we can look at it from when we do step out of line on some of these issues, we can take a look at it, and hopefully we can come back and revisit the marginal cost to the district and our marginal revenues and see the extraordinary disparity we have. Because even KUA has said, you look at commodities as the cost of the water, power, and chemicals. That is your variable. Everything else is fixed. Thank you. So if we have any other comments from members of the board? All right then. Is there any other business before the board?
Staff doesn't have anything else other than thank you for being here tonight.
Well, thank you. And thank you for all the work. It was a well-drafted report. And I can question some of the substance of the document itself is a benefit to everyone. Thank you.
Thank you. Gina, is there anything else procedural that we need to take care of from your end?
No, I think that's it.
Okay.
Okay.
All
Then
right.
with the unanimous, absent any objection, we are now adjourned.
Thank you, Director Wee. And
Thank you,
Ms.
everyone.
Haitis, I just want to say good job running the meeting today.
Bye
Thank
now.
you.
Good night.